Hello, I'm Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Careers. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for our webinar today, Digital Reporting, Telling the Story Behind the Numbers. I would like to thank our webinar partner today, CXO Cockpit, whose strong committed leadership helps us make this webinar possible. Despite continuous advancements in ERP and EPM CPM solutions functionality, creating and managing a monthly reporting package is still challenging at best for companies of all sizes. Most companies continue to generate reports that fail to deliver financial intelligence. Today, our featured speaker, Wouter Born, CTO and co-founder of CXO Cockpit, will enlighten us as to how leading companies are leveraging technology that allows them to efficiently create a monthly reporting package through a real-time collaborative process and empowers them to communicate the story behind the numbers. Before I delve into the content, I'm going to offer a few quick words about Treasury Careers, cover a few housekeeping items, and then I'm going to officially welcome my co-speaker to the webinar. A few words about Treasury Careers. Treasury Careers is a division of TreasuryJobs.com. Quite simply, we offer content and resources designed to empower the success of Treasury professionals. Now on to our exciting housekeeping items. Please note the presentation is available in the handouts area of your GoToWebinar control panel. If you have any issues downloading the presentation, please send me an email at ernie@360thoughtleadership.com. For those of you interested in receiving CTP credits for today's webinar, you'll have to answer all the polling questions and remain on for the duration of the webinar. We'd love to hear from you today, so we can take your questions at any time in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. We do our best to get to your questions during the Q&A session at the tail end of the webinar. Fear not, if we do not get to your questions, we will follow up with you directly and get your questions answered. Finally, we appreciate your consideration in taking a short survey at the end of the webinar today, as we always strive to improve the ROI we offer our event attendees for their valuable time. Now I'd like to welcome Wouter Born to the webinar. He is the CTO and co-founder of CXO Cockpit. As part of the founding and global management team at CXO Cockpit, he is passionate about growing the CXO Cockpit brand, product, and company in any way possible. His 16 years of experience with EPM software like Hyperion, SAP, BPIC, Tagetik, and IBM TM1 helps him to understand the market, meet customer needs, and exceed customer expectations. Wouter, it is a pleasure to have you on the webinar today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Ernie.
Now, before we get started, I'm going to give you the roadmap to our agenda. First, we're going to talk about the two sides of financial reporting, the numbers and the narrative. And then we're going to go into a digital reporting and overview, and Wouter's going to take us through that. And then we're going to get to a very important subset of digital reporting where many companies fall short, the financial storytelling. Wouter is going to take us through the challenges and opportunities in this arena. He's also going to share with us the value of storytelling done right. He's going to share some specific case studies, and he's also going to take us through a short demonstration of how a team can work together very efficiently to tell the story behind the numbers. Then we're going to move into our Q&A session and wrap things up with some closing thoughts. So first, let's take a look at financial reporting, the numbers side. So this is where a lot of us and a lot of companies, we get caught spending the majority of our time. And many times the narrative and the commentary is often an afterthought, but this is oftentimes some of the most valuable observations. So one of the things that we're looking to do is we really want to minimize the time we spend on getting the numbers together and spend more time on the analytical piece and empowering data-driven decisions. So some common pain points, common to all of you, I'm sure. Time to close, to get the numbers into the report, it takes too long. And this is obviously relevant whether it's external reporting, SEC reporting, or whether it's internal reporting as well. Even to get those internal reports out, we have to close those monthly books. And then as far as the process cost, it costs too much. And one of the big points here is just the time, how much time it takes. And there are processes that often compete against each other. There are disparate systems, so we'll touch on that a little bit later. in terms of just closing the books, reconciliations are often manual, inefficient. Again, data is coming from multiple places. Disparate systems might not be quality. And then, of course, compliance, and there are dynamic and diverse dimensions to compliance. So those are some of the common pain points. And I really love this chart, which is courtesy of the Hackett Group. And this shows some of the financial reporting bottlenecks and concerns. And I believe these bottlenecks and concerns are consistent across the numbers part and also the narrative part. And so it's really interesting to see the challenges, top performers versus peers. But what we'll see is, you can read the slide obviously yourself, we're looking at manual efforts, right? Manual postings, manual efforts, the lack of automation, the interface between systems, the capacity of staff, which is important. Again, that time. How do we help our folks focus on high value activities? Again, technology, the input from our non-finance professionals, coordination of timeliness, whether that is with HR or otherwise. So just wanted to point out some of these common pain points and some of the areas that we might want to look to mitigate. The good news is that if we are leveraging technology that makes us efficient in financial storytelling, it's often the case that it's also going to make us more efficient in terms of generating the numbers as well. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our first polling question here to help us set some context for our featured speaker today. So just want to get a sense from the audience. Please share with us, how much time do you currently allocate to real analysis and recommendation development each month? A few notes. I appreciate everyone's consideration in taking all of our polling questions here today. Those of you interested in CTP credits, you'll have to answer all of our polling questions here today. Want to remind you that we can take your questions at any time during the webinar. And it's really important that we take advantage of the opportunity that we have to tap into the expertise of Wouter, our featured speaker, renowned expert. So please take advantage of the opportunity. I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another 10 seconds or so. Then we're going to go ahead and take a quick look at those results. And then I'm going to offer my thoughts, and then I'm going to bring in Wouter and see what he thinks about his initial gut reaction is to the polling question. I'm going to go ahead and close that polling question. Let's take a look at the results. So we have 43% less than 4 hours. We got 21% 4 and 8. We've got 24% over 8 hours, and then 12% I don't know. For me, what sticks out, I'm pleasantly surprised to see that number is 24% over 8 hours. And of course, I would like to see more of us up in that area. So really what sticks out to me is I'd like to see more up in that 4 to 8 and over 8 hours. But I'm pleasantly surprised to see that 24%. Wouter, what are your initial thoughts here?
Yeah, I think this is something you can see as a general trend. Companies like to spend more and more time on value add analysis, and but there is always this challenge of how much time do you have left after you've created all your reports and you're done with your month-end close. So obviously, I love companies to see that they spend more than 8 hours, and I hope in the near future that there are going to be a lot more companies being able to do that.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. So now we're going to pivot to the narrative side. So I'm going to talk about what I see as the state of the union in terms of how the narrative is created at most companies. And then we'll talk a little bit about why it matters and why it's so important. And then we will turn the floor over to Wouter for his compelling content. So again, I mentioned before, I think the state of the union is companies just spend so much time pulling the numbers together, the strategic value of financial reporting is often lost. That being the story behind the numbers. So let's just, help set the stage a little bit. Why is it so important? Why does the analysis matter? For public companies, it's leveraged to support corporate earnings calls. It can be leveraged by investors and potential investors to assess a company's financial health, and especially in terms of the operational agility, the financial agility, and in terms more of the internal reports, guide senior company leaders in the development of their strategies to run the company. So really, it should be leveraged to deliver insights to define actions to impact performance across the enterprise. And this is really what we need to be able to get from the commentary to give us the ability to understand what the numbers are, ask the right questions, and also something I failed to mention before, it's also very important, especially if we're able to deliver the report in electronic formats, the people are actually able to dig into the numbers and do some self-service in terms of their question, ask more questions, especially if you're that CFO on that earnings call, right? You want to really understand what the numbers mean and then how you're going to improve those numbers, and can also be used to identify risk exposures that need further analysis or require actions to mitigate. So again, extremely important, the ability of financial storytelling. However, the current state of the union, many companies, they have a separate process altogether to analyze and add commentary to financial report. So the financial reporting process is kind of disparate. The numbers are on one side and the commentary and narrative on the other. Spoke about this a little earlier. Technology, sources of data don't talk to each other. This was the case when I was in finance. The narrative was pulled together from multiple parties via email. I myself worked in Treasury. I'd work on areas related to Treasury, cash, and explanations of debt, and so that was always done via email. Some of the relatively more advanced companies have a template in MS Word, and then also in terms of even when the report is created, revisions are managed via Excel, Word, PowerPoint, MS Office, right? And which is error-prone at best. And then also, it's often the case that regional or line of business controllers are tasked with providing explanations of the business in order to support the best possible understanding at the corporate level, despite the fact that sometimes they don't have access to the information that they might need and the data that they might need, and there may not be a level of collaboration between the business controllers who obviously have that knowledge across those lines as well. And then some more State of the Union, the biggest challenge. Survey shows 35% have a standard narrative template. So, and the other issues that we have, there's a specific day corporate finance needs to receive it. They often have a specific meeting to collaborate on the narrative, which is done on a conference bridge. They might agree upon the final draft in the meeting, sometimes not. It takes them a while to get the answers required. They have to agree on the following day. So there's often back and forth. Things get escalated. Guess what happens, folks, during that call? Finger pointing. So takes time away from analysis and the recommendation building. And then some companies have no process at all, which again is dangerous given the value proposition. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our next polling question. So we talked about several pain points that we have, asking you to share with us which of the following pain points are you enduring. Now, it may be all of the above. However, some of you may feel so strongly. If you feel very strongly about one, just go ahead and click on that button if it's particularly painful to your company. So we're going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds. Again, appreciate everyone's consideration in answering all of our polling questions during the webinar today. And also want to remind you that we can still take your questions in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. So I'm going to go ahead, once again, close the polling question, give my initial take, and then I'll get Dan's comments. And then once we get away from the results, we'll go ahead and hand the floor over to Wouter. So let me go ahead and close. Let me go ahead and share. So it looks like we have, I guess I kind of cooked the books a little, 42%, all of the above. But this is one that I think really stands out to me, using Excel to massage numbers until they make sense, and that's very dangerous. I would guess if I were to ask which is the most painful, that would have been it. But also, I'm not surprised, but I expect to see collecting missing commentary for the same people. So how do you create that accountability, right, on that side of it? So Wouter, what are your thoughts here on the initial results?
This is actually a great bridge to the rest of today's presentation. Excel is a great tool for ad hoc analysis or doing personal analysis, but as a reporting platform, I think it's highly dangerous. There's no audit trail back to where the numbers came from, and it's very time consuming. There are a lot of other risks, like you could leave it on your computer while it gets stolen, and I think it's good for companies to realize that there's a risk around this, and fortunately there are great alternatives for using Excel. So
okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Wouter. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand the floor over to Wouter, and Wouter is going to go ahead and take us through his content. Really going to focus initially on the digital reporting and then dive down into the financial storytelling. So Wouter, we can see your screen. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. So today we're going to talk about storytelling, financial storytelling, performance storytelling, focusing on how a corporate can tell the story behind the numbers and convey the numbers in a way that your business people actually understand it. Very quickly about CXO, we are a global operating company headquartered in the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands originally. I work now for from our Atlanta office, Atlanta, Georgia, here in the USA. We are founded about 10 years ago by a team of people with an EPM background, EPM tools like Hyperion, SAP BPC, etc. So we have a big background in corporate financial systems. We serve globally about 100 great companies, digital leaders like the ones that you see here on the screen. We typically work directly for the CFO of us at holding level. So our reporting serves the whole management need of senior management and the rest of the management at divisional level. So just to start, and I think this is in line with the polling questions that we've just seen and the answers on that. Excel, if we talk about reporting challenges, there are a couple of things that are typical that we get back from our customers. And of course, Excel, like I said, it's a great tool, but it also brings in a risk. And technology-wise, it's not easy to open up an Excel sheet on a mobile device or from a web browser. So it's also limiting in way of distribution. Another thing is, another challenge is, okay, how do I get the story behind numbers? So how do I get a meaningful business narrative around my profit and loss statement or around my working capital statements? Another one is choosing the right visualizations. I've seen in my career a lot of pie charts, for example, or other visualization types that I think are not optimized for financial data. I think if you look at finance, if you look at corporate performance data, it's a lot about variance reporting. So you have expectation, you had a forecast, you know what your actuals are, so you want to come up with the right meaningful visualization and not just some eye candy. And then finally, distribution. So how do I get my reports to the final stakeholder? And traditionally, that's a 300-page book printed every month, waste of paper, because most people don't read it. And if they read it, they might go directly to page 126 because that's the page that they care about. So it's a push mechanism instead of pull. I think these challenges that's something we would like to look a little further into today. It's hard to solve these challenges. And just to give an overview of the typical use case that we see when you talk about corporate financial systems, and that could be an ERP or an EPM system, but we see that there's a lot of time spent on and a lot of money as well spent on great financial models. Companies do implementations of an EPM system, and there's a lot of meaningful management information in those systems that build great dimensionality, telling about how your sales by product, for example, has been, or they link it with other budgets. However, the result of these great systems are typically still Excel sheets. So printing, downloading data to Excel, formatting everything in Excel, manipulating maybe the Excel numbers because the system behind it was not containing that version of the truth that you were looking for. And that's error prone. It's very repetitive work. It's labor intensive. There are a lot of things wrong, I think, with this process. Also, people that are highly skilled, highly educated are doing copy pasting and drawing lines within Excel. I think it's not a right allocation of talent. Then the next step, and you see a little circle around this, it's a distribution by mail. Well, we see a lot that this is something that doesn't happen once, but it happens a second, a third, and a fourth time, because there is feedback on these Excel sheets, and people like to see something changed or add another view or whatever. And then we have the typical drawbacks. It's not dynamic, whatever you get. You can't drill on it anymore. It's not a live view on your accounting system. It's it might be a lot of stacks of paper if you print, and it might contain a lot of errors. I think within the FP&A function, there is a strong desire for changing the way they work, and these two pyramids kind of show this desire. Traditionally, a reporting cycle contains a lot of preparation time, so getting all the data together, and a very little amount of analysis and reporting time, real value adding analysis. And that's what you already saw in the during the polling question, although there was a 24% that could spend more than 8 hours on analysis and reporting. It was still a very big group that would spend a very small amount of time on real analysis and reporting. Where I think the desire is to actually spend very little amount of time on the preparation and more time on analysis and reporting. And I think nowadays, today's technology allows us to do this, because there is technology that can just take away repetitive tasks. Computers are good at certain things, maybe not good at analysis. That's where we would need our talented people for. But technology can definitely help with repetitive work, with preparation work. And that's what we're going to talk about today a little further. To talk about storytelling, I think it's an interesting concept. It's a buzzword, even in many technology vendors talk about storytelling. But I think if we look back on how to categorize storytelling today, I think it's bringing the story of performance of your organization to the key stakeholders. And I think here it says telling versus storytelling, but in the traditional process, you see there is just a lot of numbers, rows and columns, printed on paper, and given to managers. And these managers might look at it while they're in a plane, or while their driver takes them somewhere, and that's great because it's offline and you can take it. But there is really something missing here. There's no context. There is no visual representation. I can't really tell off this piece of paper if a trend is going up or down, or I can't see if I made my budget or not. There's no color or nothing. And we've tested this at many of our companies or prospects that we talk with. This is something a lot of companies recognize. Oh yeah, that's what we do. And of course, some companies have improved this already, and they have integrated charts and everything, but it's still static. It's still something that doesn't allow you to dynamically analyze. So we talk about financial storytelling the way we look at it. I think it's all about, okay, how can I tell the story of performance to my stakeholders? And I would say there are 4 steps within financial storytelling. I think it starts with a proper analysis. So you would look at the data and get to the core of the issue. The next step where I mentioned collaborate, I think that's where I mean this is not something you do on your own. It's normally it involves multiple users from your company. It could be user at the business, other financial users, could be management or people in your team. But you would typically try to collaborate on analysis, and I will make that later on during a short demonstration a little clearer what we mean with that. Then you create your story. So you can take several parts of your analysis and create an integrated story of this, and that story needs to be shared in a digital way. And with digital, I mean not printing, but through modern technology in an interactive way, so the story receiver can take maximum benefit of it. So when we talk about storytelling, the prerequisites, the way we see it at Seek2Copit, it's a couple of points, but I think they're quite relevant. It's all about can you eliminate noise and just get to the right visualization that really tells your story, really gets to the point. Another point I think is there is no use in storytelling if the source is not considered as truthful. So we've seen so many companies where there was a meeting with all financial controllers of all business units, and everyone came in with a different version of the P&L of the company. So there was no single version of the truth, no single formatting. So bringing in a certain level of reporting governance by saying, okay, this is our company profit and loss format, and everyone shows their data in that format, is really going to help. And then the last part, I think it's, although within reporting you want to see numbers, you want to know what the numbers exactly are, especially if you're in accounting, it's about facts. But visualizations like certain charts can really help to explain a story. And again, I think it doesn't have to be for decoration, because if you don't need a chart, you shouldn't use it. Charts have to be meaningful. And just to give a small example of how you could use a meaningful visualization, we're looking here at a company that has different geographical regions, and Europe in this case is underperforming. So this is a bridge visualization where they're looking at their sales budget towards actual, and you see that Europe has been slightly underperforming their budget. Initially, that could be a concerning thing. If you look at the next chart, so I want to convey this story. So in my next example, I'm actually extracting the currency exchange impact, so the FX impact, into a separate part of my chart. And here you see that Europe all of a sudden turns green. So they actually did better than their budget, but they have been hurt by the currency impact. So within their local currency, they actually have made their budget. And if you take this one step deeper and drill into the different regions, you can really see that in this case, and we took an example of a UK company, and that the Brexit in this case really caused this big drop in the British pound, and you could visualize this. This is a story you can take to someone, and that people would understand. So that's what I mean with telling a story through charts and using a meaningful narrative together with it. We'll get into more detail in a little bit. I'd like to take you through two customer cases before I move over to the demo. One of the companies that we implemented, where we implemented storytelling, is a Silicon Valley-based Fortune 100 tech firm, and within this company, they had a standardized BI solution that they used for all their more operational analysis. They were using as financial systems Hyperion and IBM TM1. So the BI vendor initially tried to bring in the analytics they asked for, but since this was completely financially FP&A data, so it was finance in nature, it kind of failed because the BI tool could not understand how the more complex structures of a large corporation work, and they couldn't really display the numbers in a way that finance would be comfortable with. With CXO Copy, we were able to build that report. I'm going to show the report in a second, but within a couple of hours, and within 3 months, we had a complete digitalization of the FP&A reporting live, up and running. And I think that's an example also of using the right tool for the right thing. I think BI tools are great. They have a great purpose, but within finance, in my opinion, they lack functionality. They're much more focused on operational transactional data and not on aggregated enterprise performance. So let's have a look at this report. It's a FLUX report focusing on deviations between or variances between, in this case, actual and budget. What the nice thing here is that they had a matrix. So this is obviously sample data. This is not the real data of this company, but it shows, for example, that they have different products. That's in this case, smartphones and tablets and computers and networking. And then they have their different cost centers on the rows. And so the regional owners, together with the cost center owner, are together responsible for giving a brief narrative on where this why this threshold has been exceeded, or why there's such a positive or negative variance. The data can be entered like here in the system, so to some extent it's this is something you could have built on Excel as well, but it's completely standardized. For every month this report is ready to use, and the data could be entered online only in the cells where you would like people to enter data. The data can be locked at some point and can be distributed through storytelling technology. I think it's a great example where it makes sense to combine numbers with actual explanation and resulting in a meaningful report. Another really nice example of a company that was very advanced with storytelling. It's a company in the Nordics called DELAVAL. They had the objective to do reporting in 4 areas. So sales reporting was really important, and then on a daily basis, management reporting to fully focus on the group performance. They also were looking for tooling that would help them with their board meetings. So with live board meetings, they wanted to have a storytelling tool that would give them the story live on the screen, but also could answer any ad hoc questions. So not a static, a PowerPoint would have worked if you just need to do a next kind of navigation. But if you want to drill down on a certain account and understand, what has been the trend of this account, you need another system, and that's really, why they chose to do this project with us. Within 7 months, they had 300 business users, receiving the story and actively participating in storytelling using the CXO Cockpit platform. Just to show you some of the nice visualizations, they use a lot of graphics, a lot of nice ways to tell their story together with commentary. So in these examples, you can't see the commentary, but they do make it very visual to explain the story of performance. During the demo, I will make a little clearer what the active part of CXO Cockpit means, or the dynamic part. So we're going to move to the demo. The 4 steps in storytelling, I just mentioned those. It's analyze, collaborate, create, and convey. And that's going to be all part of my demo line. So I will take a real live use case of one of our customers, but it's obviously with fake data and fake people. This company, Comma Communications, is selling. It's a wholesale electro domestic devices. So everything from microwaves to smartphones. The group CFO is Olivia Johnson. She's based out of the US. Same as John Smith. He will be the main character today. And then there is Jose Garcia. He works from out of the Barcelona office, and he is the VP of Finance of Europe. And mainly John and Jose are going to collaborate and create a story for Olivia, because she has a board meeting tomorrow. And in this board meeting, she's been specifically requested to go into some gross margin issues. Okay, that having said, I'm going to move to CXO Cockpit, and most likely I'm timed out exactly. So I'm going to log in. CXO Cockpit is an online system. It works from a web browser or from a mobile app. And let me just maximize the screen so everyone can have the best view. By logging in, it brings me to my homepage. So as John Smith, this is my homepage. Every user can have different homepages, but this is a great example of a nice homepage. It has some tiles, the way we call them, some core KPIs at the top of your screen that are most important for this company. A little bit above that, there is what we call a point of view bar, so I can select my current month, my year, whether I want to see the data in periodic or year to date, and I can go to the entity tree. And here you see the different main regions of Comma Communications. They are active in the United States, in Europe, in South America, Asia. Those are the 4 main regions. And these regions also contribute to the story of performance every month. So some other elements, what we see on this homepage, and I think those are more Excel style tables rows and columns still, but very friendly looking. And SIXOCOP comes with all kind of features like, okay, if I want to drill down further into my direct costs, I could look, into more detail. If I want to click on total compensation, then the other two charts will turn into total compensation. Well, actually, my story today that I need to prepare for Olivia as being John is about gross margin. And so let me click here on gross margin to go to a more detailed view on gross margin. And what you see here is it's what we call our financial statement report. There are many versions of this. You could use this for your profit and loss, for your working capital, your balance sheet, but it's a great view to display a financial statement. And what we're looking here is the corporate P&L at group level for September 2016 in a year-to-date view. And what I would like to do is actually make some first analysis. In our company, we mainly care about our actual versus the forecast, because this is the most recent estimation of what we expect it to be at. And another thing I'd like to do is I'd like to switch this to entity, so I can see which of my entities are making their forecast and which aren't. And here I see there is some issue within the Europe entity. It's really Europe that had a gross margin percentage of 47%, while their latest forecast said 64%, and that's a very big deviation. So I would actually like to, after I've made this analysis, I'm going to take this a level deeper. So I'm going to zoom into Europe. And, I will see there are some countries below Europe. But what's probably more important is that I would like to share this analysis with Jose, who works from Barcelona. So I'm going to start a conversation. Conversation is the main technology to do collaboration within SIXOCOP. So I will just ask him, can you please explain the GM percentage periods. So I'll add a participant. Conversations or collaboration within SIXOCOP can be done with one person or with a whole group of people, like a team. In this case, I just want to share this only with my team member Jose. So I'll just have a quick note, see if he has any thoughts, and I'm going to open up a second browser, which is an Edge browser, just to make sure I can simulate two different users, and I'm going to log in with the account of Jose Garcia. So, when Jose logs in, he sees his own image here just to confirm he's really in his dashboard, and he sees a little thingy popping up here that says, okay, you have a new message. So he sees his own boss here asking him about a gross margin percentage. So he clicks on this new conversation, and that takes him to exactly the same view where Jose left. And he can see now there has been a trend, a pretty negative trend, that they never made their forecast in the recent history. You could even zoom a little further and say, okay, I want to understand these numbers better. Well, it doesn't bring me any additional insight. Actually what happens is that a lot of his people left the company. A big part of his sales force has left to a competitor. So he just writes back, has to do with our new competitor. Hiring our sales people. So he sends back this message, and while I click back to John, you actually see that John gets an immediate response. So this is almost like chatting on a report. So as being John now, it might have been a little quick, but I'm back to John's view. I'm writing, okay, just make sure you make this part of your monthly narrative, because that's really in the process where they are. At the end of the day, we need the providing of the monthly commentary have to be done. And if you look in SIXOCOP, here I'm on a conversation, but if you switch one box to the right, there is something we call point of view comments, and point of view comments is really the narrative of your monthly point of view. Let me switch this back to periodic, and I'm going to go to Jose Garcia. So, Jose reads immediately the response here, so just make sure you make this part of your monthly narrative. So, okay, that's great. So, being in Europe here, email within 5 minutes saying, okay, you missed your conversation. So by going back to the group total, what John can do is go and say, okay, I'm going to have a look on my subsidiary comments. So at all 4 of my subsidiaries, let's see what they have entered in their commentary. And now he sees that also there is a story of Europe explaining, why the gross margin has been so low. And within South America, they've included the Brazilian Consumer Confidence Index. So every company has written their story. What John is going to do, because he needs to tell the story, he needs to prepare the story for Olivia to tell tomorrow. He's going to consolidate these comments to group level. And what really happens at consolidation, it's literally a copy of the underlying subsidiary comments. What he can do is give it a little small post edit. Probably most important is that the story of Europe is the key story. Asia is actually not really important for this month, so he would like to remove that. And he's going to put Europe on top, and maybe change the label slightly so it looks a little bit more commentary friendly. So let's say we'll give it like a bigger font size. Same thing here for United States. And just save the comments. So it becomes a nicely formatted story. And he could have extended it with his headquarter comments, for example. But this together is a nice analysis, a storytelling building block. And what we would like to do is create a new story. Within CXO Cockpit, we call those storyboards. So I will just create a new story, and I call it board meeting, and it has a gross margin focus. So I'll just call board meeting gross margin focus. Could have included a date or anything like that. Very first thing I'd like to do is add this report, including the analysis, to my story. So I do that by just clicking here quickly on this button and selecting my story. Say that I would like to add the page. So that's the first page. But also I'd like to add some more deeper analysis, because this is great explaining Europe that they lost a big part of the sales force, but I want to prove that story. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to my headcount analysis and I do see that we lost a lot of headcount. We actually lost 64 people in Europe. So if I drill a little further on Europe, and I compare this to December previous year, and my actual, so I've lost a lot of good people within Europe, and I would like to add this to the story. So Olivia can explain that tomorrow to the board members that has been the issue. So I could give it a quick page note. If I don't have any formal commentary, point of view comments we call it, I can always give it a quick note. So something like many people left to our main competitor. Situation is now under control. What's important to think with any kind of value-added analysis to not repeat the data that everyone can already see. You have to make sure that you add something to the numbers and to the visualizations. So especially the context is important. People left to a competitor or people have done. It's important to tell the thing you cannot see in the data. Because if I just say, yeah, we lost a lot of people, everyone could have seen this large red bar here. So as a last part of the story, and it's also to keep it a little short for Olivia, she has a short focus meeting. I would like to add the 25 best performing product, customer segment, and sales entity, sales office combination. So this is a combination of the products that Common Communication sells, the customer segments. So is it like what kind of retailer is it? And then eventually, okay, what sales office contributed to the sales? It shows a annualized growth. So it takes the difference between April and September and shows the biggest growth over time. So this is a complete dynamic view. I'm going to switch this to gross margin because that's what we're talking about today. And I'm going to add this to my story. And again, with a short note of China is benefiting from the overall Chinese market growth. Okay, this is maybe not the most brilliant comment, but just to add something to it. I'm going to select the storyboard again. I'm going to add this to my story. So as being John, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go review my story. I see these 3 pages, and I'm going to share this with Olivia because she has to do the presentation tomorrow. I reviewed it. It's done. It's exactly what I want. So I'm going to give Olivia Johnson access to the story. I can give her different rights. I could make her a viewer. She can be an editor, so she can collaborate with my story, or she can be an owner, and that means she could assign other people to own this story. Well, in this case, I want to keep control on the story, so I'll just make her a viewer. That's enough for her role. So I'm going to save the changes here and switch to the browser of Jose, log out, and log in as Olivia, just to show you how the final story would look like. So while Olivia is, when she enters the system, she's gonna bring up this live on the screen tomorrow during her board meeting. So this will be the tool for her to tell the story. If we would have just given her access to all these dashboards and all these great things, she might have a hard time. People will ask her all kind of things, and she would go in all different kind of directions, and it's hard to keep your storyline. So storyboards are really effective at keeping your storyline. She sees that John Smith shared a storyboard with you, so board meeting, GM focus, exactly what she was waiting for. So what she can do is just play the story on her screen, press the play button, and it will almost appear like a PowerPoint presentation. So you see here at the top there is a print button for people who still like to print. There is a next kind of UI, so I can just press next, go to the next page. So it acts like PowerPoint, but it has another big benefit, and that's I think the benefit of being able to answer ad hoc questions. So if one of my fellow board members asks me about, okay, what about gross sales? So I can actually click on gross sales and show the trend of gross sales, or say, okay, I understand that we sold more than our forecast, but what about our budget? So she could answer that question, but she's still fully in her story because she has these 3 pages prepared, or compared to last year. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of options for her to still answer ad hoc questions, or maybe go into the different regions of Europe, or or switch back to products to understand what were best-selling products, etc. And she has all the context with it. She could have decided to already send out the story up front of the board meeting, so it becomes more a Q&A meeting instead of a briefing. So a lot of options here. Well, she goes to the next page, and I missed one page. I might have added that one to the wrong storyboard with a head count. Yeah, okay, great. So we missed I must have pressed I must have added it to the wrong storyboard because there were two on my list. But normally she would have had this page in between with the headcount data, the one that I showed before. And then as a last page, she actually sees the the product combination with sales entities and shows the biggest drivers. And this will really help her to talk through the story, but using a live system and allowing to make drill down analysis, allowing her to make slice dice, and having still notes that she could personally also write down, but having her preparation ready in all one digital board book. Okay, let me go back to one of my final slides. And it's kind of the key takeaway of effective storytelling. So the question is like, why do I really need this? This all looks great, but we're fine with our current way of doing things. I think one of the great things about doing digital storytelling is that you are really creating a deeper insight in your data to drive better management decisions. It's all about increasing decision power. Another key benefit, it's all about, can you report faster, less preparation time. These stories that we see now can be prepared in a couple of minutes instead of endless clicking around in Excel to prepare your board book. And another, probably the last but very important part is by making the storytelling an agile process and a collaborative process, you are constantly improving the process as well. You can use these narratives or these collaborations, these conversations, you can use it to improve your data, come up with action plans. And if your day sales outstanding is way too high, let's come up with a plan to improve it as of next month. So it becomes a process, an agile process that's by nature improving itself. So this is kind of where my part wraps up. Ernie, I'm handing it back to you for any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Wouter, for your great content. And I think it was important for us to go into the demo, in this case, to really see how that storytelling works and how powerful that is. Some of us can feel these pain points directly, having been able to go in front of the board and feeling like you're unarmed to answer questions, not only to get to the storytelling, but also to be able to do Q&A on the fly and dig into the numbers. And the other part of it that I see from my side in being involved in this is that if I send this out to the board, they can click in there and they can get access and they can ask questions, and we can really make ourselves look good, and we can really extract the value from our board. I think a lot of times companies don't really get the full value of what their board can really offer them. So we have time for a few questions. Again, we can still take your questions in the Q&A area of your GoToWebinar control panel. Just a couple functionality questions here, Wouter. And I know this might be a long question, but can you just give us a little sense of how the data is kind of collected, flat files, how that works, APIs, and then the other side of it is a couple people are asking, companies make this investment like in this high-powered CPM system. Can you explain to us how they're still falling short even with that big of an investment?
Yeah, that's actually a great set of questions, and they're strongly related. Let's start about data connectivity. With our platform, we just have native adapters to the leading EPM platforms in the market. So we just have a one-on-one connection. It's either live or there's a staging area in between. But that's something that doesn't require any IT involvement. That's just a native connection, so it's plug and play. Regarding any other data, we have data Excel uploading functionality, so you can upload Excel sheets, create a little model online around it, and yeah, start reporting on data that you load from your Excel files. Or you can also upload any data warehouse or relational data source and start reporting on that. So there is a whole bunch of options there. If you're talking about the second part of the question, can you repeat it one more time, by the way, Ernie? Because I got a little lost in this.
Oh, that's okay. So, let me just go to a different area. So the first part was I'm sorry, was on the data analysis. Next part, let me pivot towards the communication side of it. So as you mentioned, are there different ways to distribute the reports in different formats, folks? And do folks get alerts when there are things that need their attention, or does that happen when they log into the system?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. So within CXO Cockpit, we have several ways to distribute reports. The storyboard is one way. We also have just a regular CXO Cockpit client where you can log in and just choose your reports and your dashboards that you would like to see. So it's more a pull versus a push. But we also have what we call a CXO viewer client, and that allows you to send a URL like an email to someone, and that would actually pop off. That would start up a storyboard that just starts playing. Also, we have great mobile apps that do the same thing on a mobile device, and there it's just a matter of swiping, from your reports from left to right. So very intuitive use case as well. And yeah, we really try to make that part as simple as possible. So having a good distribution of your reports.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and launch our last polling question as I ask our final question, to be mindful of our time of our Q&A session. Wouter, can you give us a sense of what's next in terms of the functionality, in terms of digital reporting and storytelling, and maybe some features that have already come out this year, or what folks can look for?
Yeah, that's a great question to end up with. We have been investing a lot in making the system smarter. So we include predictive analytics. If you, for example, within finance, I'm to some extent a little skeptical on predictive analytics, but they're great use cases. If you generate a forecast and a budget every month, you might want to compare that to what the system could predict based on historical data. Especially if you have all the data captured in one centralized system, predictive is very powerful. If we look forward, we are going to deliver a lot more content. We believe within CXO Cockpit that finance by nature is very comparable over companies. The way how you analyze working capital, a cash flow statement, that is something that is not very different between a tech firm or a manufacturer. So what we're going to do is deliver out-of-the-box content, out-of-the-box reports, dashboards that can be used immediately, and we're going to make that community-driven so that our end users can actually contribute to new visualizations and other users can reuse these visualizations. It's not about sharing numbers. It's all about sharing the way how to visualize data.
Great. Thank you very much, Wouter, and go ahead and close our Q&A session. Again, we'll connect with you directly. Any questions we didn't get to. I'd like to once again thank Wouter for your great insights. Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
And I would also like to thank our sponsor as well, CXO Cockpit. Again, we appreciate their commitment to thought leadership. Also want to note that in the post-webinar survey, which we appreciate you taking, as we always want to get better, you will be able to request being connected with Wouter via a few clicks of your mouse. Finally, a big thank you to you, the audience, for your valuable time today. Please let us know what we can do better. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.